Hello, everyone, and welcome to SD Spooky Adventures, Spooky Tales with Debbie and Janine. I'm Janine.
And I'm Debbie. We're so excited to do this. And really, tonight we already have our theme going we want to talk about, which I think is pretty scary. We've got a half-hour show, so please share the show and get some people in here because it's going to be a great Sunday every Sunday when we go through all these scary tales of true stories. Right, Janine?
Yes, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of delve in, but also quite spooky as well.
I do want to tell you that Janine had wrote a book. Now, Janine, can you tell everybody about this?
Yes, my book is My Paranormal Life Growing Up Psychic. It's all about growing up as a child psychic into my adult ages. And then the final chapters go into a lot of the investigations that myself and my team have gone on over the years.
Fantastic. Now, I have been with you on a lot of paranormal investigations, and we have gotten into some tight spaces and scary stuff. And so on our future shows, we're going to talk all about that. And I'm Debbie Duncan, and I own PsychicFixes.com. I'm a psychic, international psychic, tarot reader, and paranormal investigator too when I have time. And I'm an author also. But we want to get started. It's because, Janine, I texted you really fast because I got on and I watched this show. And it was the Enfield Hauntings. So Enfield, Enfield Hauntings. So let me know, you guys, if you watched it. So, Janine, we have experience with this. Attachments, things that go home with you, and dynamic things. And this juicy story, which is based on true facts. So you guys, this was in Brimsdown, Enfield, London, England. The haunting happened between 1977 and 1979. Even Ed and Lorraine Warren got involved and got to investigate the house. But it started off, Janine, I know you got to see most of it, where a little girl was playing hide and seek in the cemetery, and evidently a poltergeist or some kind of spirit latched onto her and came home with her.
Yes, and that's why when we're out investigating and doing the things that we do, we always preach about protection and having that in place because attachments are real and they can be very scary.
And destructive and dangerous. Before we get into this story, I have a personal experience with one of my best friends. And she was in a house in a very nice, affluent neighborhood. And they had one thing after another. And it was a flood. They had rats in the walls, which was unheard of in her neighborhood. They had tapping and rapping on the walls. And they had things move. So, and she did see entities. So this went on and on until they moved. And they went into a house, again, in the same type of neighborhood, in the same area. Well, what happened there is everything happened that was at the other house. They had rats. They had flood. They had a fire. A fire just started, and I think, wait a minute, I think it was in the stove. Just fire. It wasn't on. Nothing was going on. Fire. And they had the cupboard swing open and the glasses, and there were witnesses, would fly out of the cupboards across the kitchen, hit the sliding glass door, and they would break. And they had bad luck after bad luck, and then health problems too, Janine. And so this kept going on, and I stopped going in the house. And I think most people know I'm not afraid of anything, but you're smart when you know not to go in. Once in a while when we go, Janine, we always say, if you see us run, right, you better run with us.
Run a little bit faster.
Yeah, because we are someone who faces this stuff. And because those shows on TV used to show them, running away and screaming, even the guys, the paranormal investigators. And we're the ones that are saying, no, run towards it. Run towards it. I think there's been a couple of times that we kind of ran away. But we did find out that my girlfriend her husband had an attachment. And it was dynamic. And so anyway, luckily, they had to end up divorced divorcing and all that. But we found out there was some crazy stuff going on, and he was attracting all that stuff in. And she would see these hooded entities, shadow people standing in her room and sometimes in the living room. So, this stuff happens, and you have to be really careful about putting protections around you. Did we ever come up to something really strong that we had to make sure we didn't bring home with us?
The only time I can think of where we came across something super strong was in Pioneer Park. There's a big tree there, and it tends to throw things at me in particular. It has these berries that will fall, but they'll throw them sideways and just whip me in the back of the head, the middle of my back, that type of thing. And it gets more active if I'm standing underneath it. So one day we were actually doing a live video on Psychic Fixes. Myself and our friend Sean, who's also a medium, we were connecting with something at the tree, trying to figure out what the deal was with me and why it would get so active when I was around, when suddenly a portal opened up. Now, this was a very large, dark portal that both myself and Sean could see. And as the wind around us started to spin, almost like a storm brewing or a hurricane, we were having trouble staying on our feet. And in that moment, there was a very, very large black figure inside this black hole. And so at that point in time, we were really struggling to stay on our feet, to even, keep our wits about ourselves, because it was all happening so quickly. And you actually had to run over and hit it with your Scrabbly stuff to get rid of it.
Well, I had part of our tour people, our meetup people with me, and we could see you guys walking backwards, like like there was a force and you were trying to keep your footing. And we were using walkie-talkies at the time, the protection person, so I always keep my stuff with me. We call it Scrabbly juice. And it's wild rue, salt, sage, all this good stuff mixed together. And a first aid kit, because you got scratched. You got a scratch, and you had on your arm, and your flesh, your skin was sticking up. So I remember first aid for that, the alcohol and stuff. Oh, Sean what was happening to his legs? Was he getting scratched?
He got scratched on his legs as well.
And I ran around I call it the wampum tree, because this thing is huge and it always targets her. But I say my, protection words, the prayers and all of that. And I throw my little Scrabbly juice all the way around that. And it settled down, and you guys said that portal, went. So interesting to say, especially when you guys said it was a dark portal and then an entity that you could outline, you could see that was even darker. And I'm like, oh, now that was at the top of the tree. It's not like we could have put our hand in. It was a huge, strong force. I was at Dearborn Park Cemetery. We were there one night. A lot of stuff happened, and we don't have time for all that. But the one thing that happened, I remember, is I saw something in the bushes by the office, and a medium came over, and she got my ear, and she says, "Do you see what I see?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go take care of it." And I took my Scrabbly juice over there and kind of let it dissipate. So that was something that I wouldn't want to come home with me. It was a lesser kind of, it wasn't that powerful, but still, these are those little things, I call them Gumbies, that can be very mischievous in your house and do stuff, and we don't want that. Now, Janine, you have people come in spirit to your house, correct? You've always had that?
Yeah, from the time I was 18 months old, I've had spirits coming in and out of the house and communicating with me. I've set some boundaries over the years as to when and where they can communicate with me, but I do definitely have spirits that come visit.
And so when I first started getting into this, I didn't know about warding your house and keeping things out. I was a freeway. Come on in. But luckily, I think my archangels and stuff, really protected me, because we had lots of movement. One time I was sitting on the couch, and the remote on the TV across the room, it came off the TV and floated in a diagonal across the room, and then ended at the carpet at the toes. And That was so weird. And then I have things move and shake. And if you don't acknowledge them, then they'll go and stop. But I've had a lot of movement in my house. So I know I have a lot of spirits that come in. And that's okay because they haven't been anything. I haven't felt anything except for one time. And that, Janine, do you remember my hag story?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And this is another reason. And someday we can talk about what you can do about this stuff. I had a lot of rapping, bam, 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 at 3 a.m. all the time. And I took care of that. But one time it was dark and I opened my eyes up and there was like ectoplasm. I think most people sometimes see that smoky stuff. And it formed this scary lady, this scary face. And I was like, I so want that to look like a nice person. Because sometimes I'll roll over and there'll be a nice lady there. She's just watching. And so what happened was it softened up. And then it got scary. And the true self came. And she was crawling down to put my hand right through her. Because why not? Oh, is it cold?
Yeah.
What do I got? I'm going to go down there. So I got up. I'm going to go down there and put my hand through this thing. When I was frozen. And then I was mad. 2 times happened mad. 10th Avenue Theater. That's another story. And this time with this thing, I call her the hag. She looked like a witch. A bad witch, an evil witch. And so I was sitting there trying to go and I couldn't. And I was mad. I couldn't talk. I said, how do I dissipate this thing? And I go, oh, if I could talk. Well, I couldn't talk, but I got the side of my mouth and I go, wow. And she went, phew, and gone. And so thank goodness I learned how to put in wards, keep those things out. But let's get back to this story. So Enfield Hauntings, you can get that on Prime Video, right, Janine?
Yeah, I found it on Prime Video. It's very interesting, the things that took place. And, you know, a lot of times when a poltergeist like this does happen, it's usually young females because they believe that sometimes the hormones can weaken you to the point where, these things can come in and kind of take over. Plus, poltergeists are believed to be caused by turmoil in your own life. So it's very
preteen, teenage years.
Because I will tell you, I learned at the age of 10, 11 to start putting protections in place, all because we invited something in through a Ouija board that attacked one of our parents. And so she was literally floating off the bed. And then we heard her hit the bed as we were opening the door as she had fallen. And all she could say was that she saw the devil that day. And so, believe me, like, thank goodness we had a lot of spiritualists in our area, and my mom and everybody was able to help clear whatever this was out pretty quickly. It didn't escalate. But with these poor girls, nobody was really believing them in the beginning. And so it just would cause them more turmoil, which would escalate the activity, which had to be terrifying for the whole family.
Right. That's a good thing. I have people in my family that use the Ouija board and they're very happy with it. They don't have any problems. First time I used it, I was very young. And my girlfriend, who is a very, very great psychic, we opened something and she was taken over. And she literally in the dark had bright red glowing eyes. And we couldn't get her out of it. We were just kids, like, hey, we get a Ouija board, here we go. Yeah, come on in. That's why I won't use one now. I know that they say it's a tool, but we have to be careful opening portals and invitations. We don't want to do it.
Yeah, and I express deeply, if you don't know what you're doing, don't play with any of the tools, because even a pendulum can open the same thing as a Ouija board, which people tend to think that they're more safe. But any open communication form or
you're
tool,
asking. You're asking for
so you have to be able to, you have to protect yourself. You have to put in stipulations and boundaries as to what's allowed. And then you have to close your communication. And as a kid, we all had, most of us had Ouija boards. I was playing with one when I was 6 or 7. So you learn very quickly after one bad experience that you can't take it lightly.
And you're right. All the divination tools that you have, the first thing you should learn is protection. And it could be as much as, we had a lot. Because the places that we went, you can use your archangels, holy water, all kinds of different things like that. This haunting was horrific. And, you know, how it affected all the people and the paranormal investigators that went in. A lot of levitation or getting pushed up to the ceiling or the wall, and a lot of bruises the girls would get, and their voices changing. So I went to a seance when I was a teenager, and this lady was like, I don't know, late 70s or 80 or something like that. And a voice came through her, a Native American person, as loud as you can even think of, from this lady. There's no way that came out of her.
Yeah, the whole spirit attachment and then channeling through you is terrifying to me. I've never allowed anything to channel through me just because I'm not willing to give over control to another entity, even for a brief moment. And for these poor girls, they had no control over it because they were so young and they didn't know how to stop what was happening. So, you know, it started with the one very young girl, and then as it progressed, it started talking through the other girl too. And, you know, I'm sure many people have seen poltergeist, and, you know, one of the main things that really does start to happen is things moving around, being flung around the room, and things being stacked in weird formations and staying there, even though, you know, physics says that it shouldn't be able to do that. These poor girls had to deal with that as well. They tried to at some point move her to another home to keep her safe from what was going on, thinking it was attached to the house when it was really attached to her. So when she moved to that other house, it attacked her there as well. And I just remember my heart stopping when I saw her come out to the living room because she was hearing the tapping, and all those glass figures were stacked all crazy in the living room.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
It is a scary thing. It's time for you to go, but next time you'll be in on the full 30 minutes. And we have Michael Mason and Jamie Mason coming on to talk about 4 of their ghost stories. So
thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You know, Janine does ghost tours. So she is going to be busy taking a tour she had to do at the last minute for somebody. So she does tours here in San Diego, and she's the best tour guide ever. And she does historic tours as well. Kim, you talking about levitation, and is it always a bad? I'm not going to say it's bad. It's bad if a demon or a dark entity, that would be bad. Sometimes they slam people somewhere and things like that. It's something that is practiced, you know, in religions and things like that. And I think it's a good thing. You said it happened in your sleep when you were younger. My goodness. That's amazing. How did you feel when that happened? Were you scared? I think that it would be scary, but if you're practicing to have that accomplishment where you can lift up, then yay. But to have it lift up, I'd be wondering what entity or what spirit was there causing that to happen. Because that's not something that actually happens in good circumstances. It can be okay. It can be a spiritual thing where people want to lift up. Maybe you were astral projecting. Maybe you felt that lifting in trying to astral project. So that's what I think about levitation. Kim says, I went all the way up to the ceiling, and I could not yell out to my parents for help. I had to ask God to help me telepathically, and then it stopped. The ceiling would be a scary thing. That's a long way up. I wonder what that was. I guess you were frightened because that happened. That could have been something that you did as well. You know what? Our time is up. Isn't that crazy? And Janine and I are going to be doing 30-minute shows. And also, Michelle and Janine are going to be doing some shows as well. And stay tuned because we'll put it all on Facebook of what we're going to be having coming in. So we're going to be back next Sunday for 30 minutes. And we'll have Michael Mason and Jamie Mason. They are on the panels at San Diego Comic-Con. And they are cosplay. They are cosplay experts, but they have ghost stories. And so they're going to be on telling their ghost stories next week. And hopefully you guys will let us know if you have one. And then we'll switch over and listen to your story as well. And I thank you so much for coming on. Janine and I will be back at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time next Sunday right here.